Hey, Twisters, welcome back to Family Twist. It's Corey here, and today's episode is going to be a wild ride, aren't they all? My amazing co-host and partner, Kendall, is flying solo for this one, and trust me, you're in for a treat. He sits down with the insightful John Portmann, and they dive deep into the twists of family, identity, and the secrets that change everything. And here's the kicker. There's a surprising twist in John's story that takes us all the way to Ireland. The kind of reveal that will make you want to rethink everything you thought you knew about family and fate. So buckle up, because this episode is full of surprises and we're just getting started. Take it away, Kendall.
I find what little I know about your story, which is purposeful, I like to discover it organically. It sounds interesting. So start out by telling us a little bit about your birth and your adoption.
I was adopted, like you, and my parents told me from earliest memory that I was adopted. And my parents were both very religious, and that will probably become an ongoing theme in my narrative, my story. My parents told me and my older brother and my younger sister that God was in charge. And God knew that our mothers could not give us the kind of love that we needed and deserved. And so that our mothers had decided to put us up for adoption, and that God had given them, to our parents. So my parents couldn't have children. I know that's part of your story as well. As a child, I didn't understand what that meant. But my parents succeeded in instilling in me at the time a sense of security and hope that everything was going to be okay. So I was vaguely aware that it's unusual to be adopted, but when I was young, I wasn't really quite clear on what that meant. My brother was adopted about a year and a half before I was, and then my sister was adopted a year after I was, and she's a year younger than I am. And we were all born in Phoenix, Arizona. My father and mother are both from Ohio, and my dad had gone out to Arizona for a job. He was teaching at Arizona State. He was a math professor. And then when we were young, I was about 3, not quite 3, we moved to Pennsylvania, South Central Pennsylvania, and I grew up, and I had a fairly ordinary upbringing. And I did not think very often about being adopted. It just wasn't really a part of my life. Looking back now, I think that I probably suppressed, pushed down inside of my memory, my mind, thoughts of what this meant, and curiosity about who my biological parents might have been, what their story was, the story of my birth. My sister told me when we were much older, and my sister and I were close growing up, we're still close now, that she thought about her biological parents all the time, and she was distressed. She didn't know why they had abandoned her. And I thought, I didn't. But then when I discovered the identities of my biological parents, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so looking back now, I think maybe I was just too frightened to think about the implications of being adopted. But I remember that I was just trying to make my way in the world, and I would get occasionally an annual health checkup. Your doctor in America, doctors want you to get an annual checkup. Obviously, if you have a doctor, if you can afford it. And routinely, doctors would ask, well, what's your family health history? How long do your people live? What do they die of? And I would always say, oh, I don't know. I don't have a family medical history. I was adopted. And they would usually just shrug their shoulders and say, oh, okay. But some of them would say that's really a shame, because the information would be very useful. And then I remember I had some friends at work. I worked as a university professor, and they would confide that they were fantasizing about retiring early, and I wanted to do that as well. And I was able to meet for free with a financial advisor through my university. And I remember they asked right away, "What's your family history? How long do people in your family live?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. I was adopted." And I remember they said, "That's really a problem because we can't really plan for your retirement unless we have some idea of how long your people live." And for some reason, I didn't really care about my family medical history. But when the retirement planners asked for it, I thought, wow, I really want to retire. So that's a reason to go looking. And I still didn't do anything. And then not so long ago, I'm guessing maybe 2017, 2018, my sister decided to do Ancestry.com. So you probably remember that in America, we saw many advertisements for Ancestry.com. And I don't have a TV. I've lived without a TV for many years. But I would visit my father often, and the TV was always on, and you would see these ads all the time. And I really never thought twice about them. I didn't really even stop to ponder what it could do for me, because I didn't know what kind of report it gave you. I didn't know, for example, that you get an ethnicity report. So I really didn't think about anything at all. And then one day, my sister told me, I'm guessing this was about late 2017, early 2018. My sister told me that she had done it. She had taken this exam, and I remembered many years earlier, 25 years earlier, when she told me that on a business trip to Phoenix, she had contacted some state authority. There was an office somewhere, and she had made an official inquiry about her birth mother. And I was very surprised. And she told me that she really wanted to find out. So she had taken this initial step, and she couldn't get very far because Arizona, then as now, prohibits adopted people from gaining access to their original birth certificates, from finding out information about their birth mothers. So I remember my sister had told me that many years in the past, and then I'd forgotten about it. And then all of a sudden she told me she had done Ancestry.com. So I knew she was thinking about her birth mother again. And I just said, "Oh, okay, good luck." And then she got her result, and she had no idea how to interpret it. And she really struggled. She was on her own. But she did finally find both her birth mother and her birth father. And then she started nagging me. She kept saying, "You should do this. You should do this." And I didn't want to do it. I really didn't want to do it. But eventually I gave in. And as I indicated earlier, my sister Kathy and I have an older brother. He was adopted as well, and he still hasn't done it, and he refuses to do it. He doesn't even want to talk about it. And I'm not exactly sure why, but I think I know why. I think he's probably frightened of what he might find. I worried that my mother may have been the victim of sexual assault or rape. And I hesitate even to say this on your podcast because, of course, some children who were put up for adoption really were the offspring of a woman who suffered sexual assault or rape. I have a cousin who adopted a boy from Asia, and he went on a search and found out that his mother had been raped. This is very serious, and I don't want to offend or hurt other adopted people as I explain my own mindset. I have tremendous sympathy for people who discover their mothers had been raped. It's an extraordinarily difficult discovery, very difficult. And yeah, that's difficult even for me to say now, and I think you can understand why. But I worried that had been my story, and it turns out it was not. While I was growing up, in those rare moments when I did think about my birth mother, I imagined that she was very much like your birth mother. I thought my parents might have been crazy teens in high school, and they were horny, and one Friday night in a car, that's what I thought probably happened. I knew that my mother had given me to the Catholic Church. I was born in a Catholic hospital, St. Joseph's Hospital in Phoenix. The Catholic Church has a long history of helping women in trouble. The Catholic Church has at least 1,000 years of experience responding to this difficult situation of an unmarried woman getting pregnant, giving birth, and then rescuing the child. So I thought my parents, or at least my mother, but probably my parents, were probably Catholic and wanted me to be brought up Catholic. And certainly the nuns, Catholic Family Association in Phoenix, from whom my parents adopted me, insisted that my parents give me a Catholic upbringing, which was no problem at all because my parents were really Catholic. Yeah, I grew up and my sister kept nagging me, and I was frightened. But something in me thought, why not just find the courage, take the leap, and do this? So as the test is extremely simple. You pay not a lot of money. I think it was $60, and you get this little kit in the mail, and you spit in a little test tube. You send it off, and that's that. So I was having dinner with my partner one night. I remember that I had sent it off right before classes began. At my university, classes resume in late August, maybe August 20th or 25th. And I remember I had sent it off then, and it was at least 2, maybe 3 months later. We had just finished dinner, and we both pulled out our computers. We were looking at our computers and one another from across the table, and all of a sudden I got an email from Ancestry.com, and I thought, and I didn't even say anything. I just sort of opened it, and it said, "We have your result." And I thought, wow, wow. It all happened so fast. You know how quickly your mind works. And it didn't tell me who my parents were. It just said, "You are 100% Irish." And that was quite a shock because it had never occurred to me that I was even 1% Irish. Many times in my life, and it happens still, people will ask me if I'm Danish or Swedish or Norwegian. That happens often. I used to always say, I have no idea. I was adopted. And now someone asked me just last week, a stranger, and I say no. I was confused, surprised, and then I wondered, what happens now? At least on Ancestry.com, of course, there are a number of packages. They do tell you these are the people to whom you're related. These are your DNA matches. It just didn't mean anything to me. I mean, you can call yourself Superman or Wonder Woman. You can use your first name and only your last initial, or your first initial, and you can make up. So there were these names there. I really didn't know what to do. So I contacted this one woman randomly. She was in the Midwest, and I said, "I think that I'm related to you." And she was very nice. I indicated I'm adopted. I don't know anything at all about where I come from, and I'm trying to discover where I may be from. And I'm just wondering if you can help me. Are you and I related? And she was super friendly. And we corresponded for a while, and she said, "I don't think I'm related to you." She said, "Your closest match could possibly be confusing. That's to say, sometimes a wife may run the search for her husband. Sometimes a husband may run the search for the wife for whatever reason." And she said, "I think I'm related to someone married to one of your cousins." And I said, "Oh, okay. Sorry to disturb you." And again, she was so nice. And she was the one who said to me, "What you need to do is find a DNA detective or a DNA angel." And she said, "You have to join Facebook." I wasn't on Facebook. She said, "You have to join Facebook, and there's this site that you go to, and there are lots of people like you. Most of them are adopted, but not necessarily all of them. And you can go to this group and find someone who will help you." And I thought, okay, I've come this far. Why not keep going? I joined Facebook and I went to the DNA detective site, which is truly wonderful. I felt like a kid. on a playground. I felt my parents had moved to a new town and it was the first day of school, and I go to the playground and all the kids are playing and laughing and yelling and they know one another, and I'm all by myself wondering, how do I fit in here? I just thought once again, okay, I've got to just take this leap. I typed into the chat room, I was adopted and just received my Ancestry.com report. I can't make sense of it. Can anyone here help me? Within 5 minutes, I had not one, but two offers, two really good offers. Two women who said, I know exactly what to do and I can guide you. The first woman was very nice. There was nothing to turn me against her. But the second woman said, I Googled you very quickly and found out that you are a professor. I'm a university professor as well, and I thought that you and I would have something important in common. I was not adopted, but I've helped about 100 adopted people find their parents, and I'd be really happy to help you. And so I said, okay, great, I'll go with you. And I told the first woman, thank you so much, really appreciate it. But this other woman and I are in the same profession, and she wrote me this long, compelling narrative. This woman, she's Canadian, and she is a university professor. She did everything, absolutely everything. She said to me, this is going to sound alarming,
Wow.
and I'm going to give you as much time as you need, but what I'm going to ask you to do is give me all your passwords. When you work in a university, probably any firm in America, they tell you never, ever give your passwords to anyone. She said, I have a website on my university page. You can see that. You can see what I publish. I am a bona fide, legit person. Take as much time to verify my identity as you like and get back to me if you feel you can trust me. And honestly, I paused for maybe 30, 40 seconds and I thought, it seems really unlikely that she's lying. I'll just do it. So I gave her my Ancestry.com password and one other password. And she got to work. And within 7, 8 days, she had found my parents. And she and I have become close. And she gave an interview to the BBC just this past summer, so about 6 months ago. And she said, again, she herself is not adopted, but she said, you might think that being adopted would prevent these questions about who you are, where you come from, what your national heritage might be. But being adopted only increases the curiosity of a person to find out who he or she really is. And that was true for me as well. I had never really allowed myself to think about this before, but once I did allow myself, it was very important to find out where I came from. And then, because I found out that I was entitled to foreign citizenship, that's to say citizenship in Ireland, it became very important and really important for me to prove that. America brims with Irish Americans. Over 80 million Americans claim Irish heritage of some sort, but very few of them are actually eligible for Irish citizenship. The rules are pretty strict. You have to be either someone whose parents or grandparents were born in Ireland to qualify for citizenship. Otherwise, you don't make it. Well, I qualified, and I wanted Ireland, I wanted the world officially to acknowledge who I was. I had an identity, as you did, as an adopted person, and I loved that identity. But something switched in me.
No.
Something switched, and it just became very important, and I had to fight very hard. I can recount that story if you want. I had to really fight hard and spend a lot of money to prove that I was the person I knew myself to be, and that my DNA detective knew me to be as well. Because when you're adopted, at least in America, for very understandable reasons, your identity is taken away from you. Shame is very much a part of my story, and I think the story of many adopted people. I know it was part of your story as well. Shame drove my biological mother and my biological father to give me away. The world was a very different place in 1963 when I was born. It was very shameful for an unmarried Catholic woman to become pregnant. And to protect my mother, to protect all Catholic women in this boat, I know your mother was not Catholic, the system, if you will, moved in very secretive ways and made a deal with my mother, with Catholic women in this boat, and said, if you give us your baby, as opposed to, say, for example, opting for an abortion, we promise that no one will ever find out about this. You can go home. You can go home and no one will ever be able to find out, because although the state of Arizona insists that all children born in a hospital receive an official birth certificate, what we have the legal power to do is to cover over that birth certificate, such that when your child is adopted, she or he will receive a new birth certificate, and no one, except for state authorities and lawyers, will be able to find the original birth certificate. It'll be hidden, and to this day, it's hidden from me. I still don't have the legal right to see it. Women were told...
I don't have mine either.
Yep. It depends. Some states, Illinois, others now have recently changed and said, look, this is information about Kendall. Kendall should have legal access to information about himself, but not all states agree. Arizona doesn't. So my mother was able to go back to Minnesota. That's where she was from. And she told almost no one. It was a secret she carried with her until she died. She died just 6 months before I found out about her. So that's how the system worked. My identity was lost, and I'm not really crying about that. I'm not saying that I suffered. There are lots of different kinds of suffering, and this is a pretty light one. But hey, I did lose something, not just a stake in this rich cultural tradition of being Irish, the literature, the poetry, the music, but also a passport, which opens up a whole new world. It's just an enormous privilege that entitles you to travel and visas and healthcare and reduced university tuition, all sorts of advantages. And I thought, okay, I'm too old to go to university. I don't have any healthcare needs now, but I just want what I'm entitled to. That's very important to me. I want recognition that this really did happen to me. I was adopted, and then I found out where I came from. Ireland, when you read their law, each country has the right to make its own law. Ireland said it doesn't matter whether you were born legitimate or illegitimate. It doesn't matter whether you were adopted or not. If you have a mother or father who was born on the Isle of Ireland, you are entitled to citizenship. You're one of us. And so I said, I want this. And that's when I started working with the Irish Embassy in Washington, D.C., and they just kept refusing me. And they said, this is crazy. We have made our directions very clear. You have to send us a birth certificate. That's how it all starts. We can't do anything about your birth certificate, and you don't send us a birth certificate. You ask us for citizenship without sending us a birth certificate, so just go away. We can't do anything for you. And I kept saying, wait, adopted people from Arizona are not allowed legally to obtain their birth certificate, so I can't fit into your process. I need help. I need you to please understand some people don't fit your process. And then I discovered that Ireland had the exact same rule, which they've recently changed. People adopted, put up for adoption in Ireland, were never allowed access to information about their birth. So I said to them, how can you refuse to listen to me when I try to explain what the law is in Arizona, where I was born? The law happens to be the same in your own country. You must be able to recognize that adopted people face a roadblock here. And I think, to the enormous credit of Ireland, they did finally stop and say, oh, there are a lot of adopted people out there. There are a lot of adopted people out there. And he's raised a very good point. Adopted people can't follow our process because they can't supply the documents needed in order to obtain citizenship. And it was DNA that changed everything.
Wow, what an episode. Kendall and John really brought it today, didn't they? I loved hearing them dive into those deep waters of family, identity, and what happens when life throws us a curveball. And if you thought that was good, hold on to your seats, because this was just part one. Kendall and John will be back next week to take the conversation even further. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. If you like this episode, we'd appreciate it if you share it with friends and family. And remember, family secrets are the ultimate plot twist. The Family Twist podcast is presented by Savoir Faire Marketing Communications and produced by How the Cow Ate the Cabbage, LLC.